I am going to be walking you through how I go about solving these killer Sudoku puzzles. I'm currently in expert difficulty. The first thing I will typically do is look for any of the squares that are, or any of the collections of squares that are just one square. So in this case, there's a 9 here, so obviously that's going to be a 9. And then we got a 7 here. Looks like a 3 down here. And I think that's going to be the last one of those. The next thing that I will do is I will scan all of the individual, or the 3x3 boxes, I should say, and see if there are any 3x3 boxes where either there is a situation like this where we have all of the other collections of squares that we know are going to add up to a fixed number except for just one box. So here we have 13 and 6 add up to 19, and then if we add 25, that looks like it's going to be 44, which means that to make this 3x3 square add up to 45, this will need to be a 1, so I can place a 1 in right there. We also have another situation where that's going to be the case down here. So 14 plus 7 is 21, plus 9 is 30, plus another 9 is 39, meaning we will need a 6 in this location. Looking at the other squares, I don't think there's any that meet that same criteria. Another thing that I will do is look at, take a quick scan of the rows and columns to see if there's any rows or columns where we have all of the squares represented except for one. So this bottom row, we know it should add up to 45, and we know what the sum of all of the squares are except for this one square on the right. So if we add 7 plus 3 is 10, plus 15, 25, and then 36, meaning this one will have to be a 9. And then to make this add up to 10, we'll need a 1 right here. Now I'm trying to take some more scans here to see if there's anything that jumps out at me. So I'm not going to be able to solve for these two squares right here, I don't think. But I can see what they will add up to, because these two squares will need to add up to 6, plus 14 is 20, plus 13 is 33, which means that they will need to add up to 12. We know that this is going to need to be a 7 or an 8, since there's already a 9 here, so I might mark that in. 7 and 8. So then to make this add up to 12, this will either need to be a 4 or a 5. And then that means that these two right here will either need to be a 1 and a 2 or a 1 and a 3. So I might add 1, 2, 3, just in case I need that later. So I'm just kind of looking to see what I can mark up to help me out with this puzzle. So there's basically 4 pairs that can add up to 10, either 1 and 9. This can't be a 1 and a 9 since there's a 1 in this row. 2 and an 8 can't be that since an 8 is going to be one of these two. 3 and a 7 can't be that since there's going to be an 8 here, which leaves us with 4 and 6. So we will mark that in. So I'm trying to think. I don't see anything that's totally jumping out at me right now. Oh, actually, since there's a 1 right here, we know that these two can't be a 1 and a 5, so they have to be a 2 and a 4. So let me mark that up. And then since this can only be a 4 and a 5 right here, it needs to be a 5. So then these two right here need to be a 1 and a 2, so I can remove the 3. So that helped us out a little bit. Then we have a 1 here, so this needs to be add up to 6. Can't be a 1 and a 5, so it has to be 2 and 4. Meaning this needs to be a 1. This one will be a 2. Interesting. So now let's maybe figure out what these two squares add up to by looking at all of the other squares in here. So we have a 14 and a 14. For 28 plus 2 is 30 plus 11 is 41. So that means it needs to be a 1 and a 3. So let me turn that on and put a 1 and a 3 in here. That will mean that this needs to be either a 6 or an 8. So 6, 8 will go in either of those two. We also know that there's two 14s here, so one is going to have to be a 6 and an 8, and the other will have to be a 5 and a 9. Since there's a 5 in this column right here, this will need to be 6, 8. And then that means that these two will have to be a 5 and a 9. But we already have a 9 down here, so the 9 will have to go in that spot. And then it looks like we don't have a 5 here, or here. So we can put it up here. And then for these two, it looks like the only two we have left in this middle 3x3 is 4 and 7, and we got a 7 there. So that will be 7. This will be 4. And then this one needs to be a 4 then. We got a 6 here. And then we actually also can figure that a 6 is going to be, a 6 can't be up here because if we had a 6, then this would be a 4, but it can't be a 4, so it has to be one of these two. Meaning a 6 can go up here. Then we have an 8 and a 1. And then a 1 will need to go here because it can't go here or here. Then we have obviously the 3 right there. And then a 9 here. And then I'll finally get back to this 8 and this 7. Looks like a 7 goes up here. Looking at the 3 to match, a 3 will go there then. This one will need to be a 2. So I think that was a good little run that we had. Oh, I can figure out what this one's going to be because it can't be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, which means it'll need to be a 9. So it looks like to figure out what these two are going to add up to, these two already add up to 8. So if we take 22 minus 8, that's going to be 14. So it's going to need to be either a 5 and a 9 or a 6 and an 8. We already have a 9 here, so it has to be 6 and 8. And we have a 6 there. So we'll go 6 and then 8. because we have a 6 in these two spots, that means that one of these two will need to be a 6, which means we'll have a 1 and a 6 down here. So I'm going to mark that up. And then here looks like we will need a 4 and a 5 in these spots. And then in these two spots, looks like it can only be a 3 and a 7. We already have a 3 here. So let's maybe fill that in. 3 and then 7. And lastly, it looks like we need a 2 to fill this 3 by 3 in. This should be getting a little bit easier at this point. So these two will need to add up to 12. It can't be a 3 and a 9. It can't be a 7 and a 5. So that means it will need to be 8 and 4. Can't figure out which is which. So let me just do one of these. These two will need to be 1 and 2. These two will either need to be a 5 and 9 or 8 and 6. We already have an 8 somewhere here, so that means it will need to be 5 and 9. Then we have a 9 here. So let me fill in that 9. And then fill in this 5. That means that there needs to be a 5 here. And a 4 here. We'll add the 4 up here. And then there's 8 as well. So let's figure out what these two need to be. We know it can't be 1 or 2. So one of them needs to be a 3, and the other will need to be a 6. Got 6 here, so we can put the 3 here. And then put the 6 over here. Ooh, and then we know that a 6 can't be in this square. Can't be in these two, and then can't be in the middle. So it will need to be in one of these two up here, which means it needs to be in this lower row, and it can't be on the left or right, so it needs to be in the middle. So that was a fun solve. What else can we figure out? So I think I want to look at this 13 right here now. We know it can't be a 4 and a 9 since there's a 9 up here, and we know it can't be a 6 and a 7 since there's a 6 in one of these two, meaning it'll have to be a 5 and an 8. We got a 5 here, we got an 8 here, so that's a pretty good indication. It'll be an 8 here, and then a 5 down here. I also did not realize until now that this one needs to be an 8. So that'll be an 8. This will be a 6. So these two, it looks like it can't be a 1 and a 6 or a 3 and a 4 to add up to 7. So it needs to be 2 and 5. Got the 2 there. So 2 goes here. And I'm just going to keep going with the 2s and see how far I can get. Doesn't look like I made it very far. So adding the 5 here. Gonna put the 1 in here. We need another 1 there. Ooh, it looks like we can solve for this one and then this one. And that means we're done with the 1s, which is cool. This needs to be a 6 and a 6. Also done with the 6s. Hopefully this goes pretty quick now, since it's more just kind of classic Sudoku solving. 7, 7. Got those, can do a 4 here. A 2 goes there. Nine. So yeah, just trying to fill in as quickly as I can, because at this point, you know, pretty easy to solve, just standard logic. And Oops. 5 there, 5 there. And I think this is the last square. So that is how it is done. Thank you for watching.